All right. So excited to be with Gabby Brick again. We did this a couple weeks ago and we're here again. And the goal of this is to get this on our podcast, my podcast. But we are live on Facebook for people to kind of watch us and post any questions if you like, any information that you hear. But this is going to be an amazing podcast. Gabrielle Brick, are you ready?
I am so ready.
Awesome. Well, let's start off by we got to dig into your background. First of all, tell people what you're doing now, and then we'll backtrack a little bit and talk about how and why you got to where you are now. Because it's been like all of us, it's been a bit of a journey, but you're doing some really cool things. So let's let you introduce yourself.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate it. So I'm a holistic nutrition specialist, and I help busy women and some men get their energy, passion, and libido back in action, right? So I'm taking people to the next level of nutrition through superfoods, plant-based nutrition, herbs, and really understanding bio-individuality and how to take their life to the next level.
And even more about that. So are you doing, well, obviously now it's a different time, but you meet in person, you talk to people all over the country. Where are your clients kind of coming from, and how do they find out about you?
So everybody I work with is virtual. So I work virtually. We do Zooms, we do calls, constantly in touch via live journaling, I call it. And so I have clients all over the country and all over the world sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I used to do in-person coaching, but then I had children, and my passion really was to create a freedom-based lifestyle for myself. I really wanted that whole laptop, cell phone, so I could be anywhere and be able to help anyone.
Right. So then even like get into that, like help anyone. How are you helping them? What are these people coming to you for? Is it really something specific, or is it just like general stuff? Hey, listen, I need to get on the right path. What exactly are some of the issues that you've had to deal with or help people deal with?
Sure. Great question. So I seem to be that person that people come to when they've tried everything. And I have people who've come to me with severe gastrointestinal disorders. And we've been able to, through nutrition, through proper supplementation, through cleansing, be able to remedy those problems or those issues, usually completely. I've had people come to me, a lot of women come to me because they're low on energy, their hormones are out of balance, their cycle's off, they want to get pregnant. So I'm helping women reestablish a connection to their body, understand their hormone cycle, and help them create a fertile environment within their body, a strong environment, so that pregnancy could become viable for them. Versus, I've had women come to me who have tried IVF and things like that. And then we've gotten together and we've been able to, like I said, cleanse, proper nutrition, and then they've gotten pregnant.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And then I've had people come to me with everything from, severe chronic pain and autoimmune dysfunction. And again, through nutrition and proper supplementation and really also diving into the emotional aspect, because I'm a big believer of the body-mind connection. So nutrition and supplementation is the focus. And as we go through that and their body starts to regenerate and rejuvenate, then we dive into some emotional work, which is what I believe ultimately keeps them on the path, and they have a lifetime transformation, right? So a transformation that lasts. They're never going to go back to where they were, ever.
So you start, well, it's probably comes down to the client, but do you start with the emotional work first, or you dive right into the kind of dietary internal cleansing?
Correct. So we begin with nutrition. because once our body feels safe, right? And we as a person feel safe in the choices that we're making for our body, and our body begins to relax into the structure, right? And it's starting to get the nutrients it needs. It's starting to get the rest it needs, right? It's starting to pull out the toxins necessary to regenerate. At that point, that's usually when the emotional work comes in, because all of the stuff is coming out.
Yeah. So the cleansing part of it, totally changing of the diet, is it, juice cleansing, liquiditarian type stuff? Talk about the different ways to kind of get the body in a cleansing mindset.
That's a really great question. And honestly, because of my belief in bio-individuality, I'll do there are various ways in which someone will cleanse. I have some clients that just simply going organic is enough of a cleanse before we do anything, right? Then I have, and all of my clients are typically very educated, as far as they've tried to do so much with health, so they have an idea or a concept of what different diets or lifestyles look like. But I come in and I really fine tune and I make sure they're 100% organic. And then we go into, now again, this depends on the person. It depends on the issues that they have, but we'll do anything from very specific organ cleansing to a soft, general whole body cleanse, right? And anything in between. But it really depends on what a person is coming to me for. There's always some sort of, obviously, cleansing action taking place.
What would be some of the super common things across the individuality that you would work with somebody and advise them about changing their ways? So like, for instance, coffee, fried foods, candy, sugar, things like that, soda. Are there some things that really any and everybody should think about kind of removing from their day to day?
Oh my gosh, 100%, 100%. And, the biggest issues I come across with my clients is gut health and lack of energy, right? So it's this idea of I've got to caffeinate so that I can keep going, but now I have headaches, I'm losing my hair, my hormones are out of balance, and I have massive cravings because I'm either suppressing my appetite and forgetting to eat and totally stressed out due to all the cortisol and adrenaline, right? And then I'm binging, right? So we absolutely 100% want to get off of caffeine. Listen, I love a good cup of coffee, but I don't live there, right? I visit coffee once in a blue moon. And that's, I feel like, how we want to look at it. It's like some relatives that we love, but we're only going to see once in a blue moon. And certain foods are like that, and coffee is one of them. I am definitely not an advocate of sugar in any way. So I'm going to recommend things, I think raw organic honey, even though that would be considered a sugar, because I know that it's more of a complete food. And offers benefits like, protein, B vitamins, antifungal, antibacterial, things like that. It's got enzymes in it. If you want to have a little bit of honey every day, I think that's fine. If you want to have a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of maple syrup, sure. But in general, I ingest only fresh fruit as my sugar. And I think, our culture has made people really afraid of fruit, and fruit is such an important friend to us. And the most natural place to get simple sugars, which we require to run efficiently.
Yeah. And in the background of this video now, although it won't be evident in the podcast, but there's at least one bowl of fruit back there. So
yeah, there's two. One of them being a huge bowl of ripening avocados with bananas on top of it. And then another bowl of some stone fruit and oranges, apples, things like that.
Yeah. And are you kind of a straight fruit eater for the most part, or will you make like an avocado pudding? Will you make like banana ice cream? Will you kind of play around within the fruit world?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I'm a straight fruit eater, but for my kids or, you know, friends or things like that, if they want a sweet treat, I'll make homemade banana ice cream with just frozen bananas and put some superfoods in it. But for me, and even my kids, every morning we have our fruit meal. That's what we eat.
Mm.
I like to make a berry smoothie where I'll just put a bunch of berries and I'll put some cacao because I love chocolate, as you know. Everyone will find out.
Mm.
So I'll put chocolate in there. I'll put some acai, maybe some camu, right? And I'll just throw in some spring water, blend it up, and that's my morning smoothie. If I'm not eating like a bowl of fruit, like say I cut up some fresh strawberries and we have fresh blueberries. Like now that it's getting warmer, we have access to more fresh berries. But yeah.
You had mentioned a little bit ago organic, and you had said just putting some clients on an organic kind of food diet was enough of a cleanse. Just delve into that a little bit more, maybe for yourself. Like, how important is it for you and your boys to eat predominantly an organic diet? And do you look at the Dirty Dozen and a Clean 15, and do you play in that realm a little bit, or are you pretty focused on organic?
I am pretty focused on organic. Where I'll stray is that maybe an avocado if it's non-organic and I'm really hankering for some healthy fat, then I'll get a non-organic avocado. But beyond that, I'm pretty staunch, and I believe that it's so important to eat organic and beyond organic, biodynamic, really, because even organic food is allowed a certain amount of chemicals. They typically are less carcinogenic and non-harmful, supposedly, right? So organic is, for me, a baseline, definitely a baseline.
Yeah.
I mean, clients will detox just by going 100% organic, because when you think about this, if conventional food, if one item is allowed to be sprayed by a minimum of 33 different chemicals, just one item, I mean, imagine all day long all the things you're eating that are either genetically modified and or sprayed with at least 15 to 30 chemicals.
Well,
So if you just went organic, right, your body's like, whoa, what's going on here? Like all of a sudden you have stopped toxins entering in. And so your body's going to filter some of those toxins out naturally. Now, a majority of those toxins will have to be helped out by proper cleansing methods. But in the beginning, a body will detox, a body will detox naturally just by going organic, because you have stopped the input of chemicals.
so I want to paint a scene for you,
Okay.
and I want to see if it bothers you as much as it bothers me.
Okay.
So I'm walking down the sidewalk from the cafe. There's another establishment not too far from us, and let's say college girls, high school girls, maybe 3 or 4 of them, all sitting around having a smoothie bowl, which in retrospect is a good thing. But if 100% of that is just your commercial food, and you've got strawberries and blueberries, some of the things that are sprayed the most often, does that bother you? Because it bothers me.
It bothers me. It bothers me because it's a perception that they're having something healthy. And yes, to a degree it is a smoothie bowl better than a bowl of cow milk ice cream? 100%. Right, conventional cow milk ice cream, that's a much better choice. However, you're still putting chemicals. And then the other piece that I find a bit tragic is because it's just simply a lack of education in the culture, I think, is food combining. right? Then people are putting all these fats and nuts with fruit and wondering why they're bloated and gassy and unable to really properly digest the dish. You know, and so you've got a lot of layers. You've got the chemicals, you've got, right, any genetically modified organisms, you know, and then you're adding the food combining piece, and I don't know, it's a gut bomb, what I call gut bomb.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's cool to take a little picture, put it on Instagram, and everybody's good to go. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's dig a little bit into your past and start talking about chocolate. So when and how did chocolate come into your world? And was there a pre-raw chocolate time when you were also in the chocolate and you just ventured on into the good stuff? Or did you just, you know, get into raw chocolate and then you discovered chocolate?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to think of how I want to answer this. So I really discovered raw chocolate, and that when I discovered the power of that food and what it did for my body and my mind, is what in essence made me fall in love with this food, or rise in love with this food. So to backtrack, as you're to ask the first part of the question, or to answer the first part of the question, excuse me, is that I was, I was kind of into sweets, but not really as a kid. You know, I was more into like the savory dishes. I wanted the French fries, or, you know, my grandma's eggplant Parmesan. Like I was more like that, you know, and, you know, I did like ice cream. But for me, what happened, you know, really, I grew up with, I suffered all the time from gut issues. I suffered all the time from tremendous allergies, to the point where I was almost carrying around a box of tissues, like terrible. At one point, a doctor said I had asthma and prescribed me, you know, one of the pumps or inhalator things. And I grew up dancing, and what I didn't like about the pump for asthma is that it made my whole body shake because it was a steroid. And so I refused to use it, and I actually learned how to breathe by myself. You know, obviously, like in retrospect, I see that I was always meant to get here, you know? Like at what age, like at 15, how does a 15-year-old know to just like, you know what, I'm gonna breathe and see if this will stop? And it did. And so that was kind of my first cue to like, wait a minute, something's happening here. Why do I not feel good? What's going on? And that I could control it was something as simple as breath in one aspect. So as a dancer, and I was avid into personal training, by the time I was 17, I had private clients, personal training clients. I was teaching at the gym. You know, I was teaching spin classes. I was teaching ballet boot camps, you know, and then like in-home privates. And with that took a nutrition course, but you know, what I call like a state approved nutrition course. So very old school mentality, especially as someone who was training with weights and dancing. It was very much, you know, like my chicken breast with my egg whites and my 3 carrot sticks, you know? And as that went on, I still was like, I don't feel good. Things aren't working. I'm having consistent, you know, yeast infections, sinus infections. I'm in and out of taking antibiotics through the course of my, you know, probably till I was 18, almost every year. Right. And finally I was like, I'm going to stop eating dairy. Wow. That was huge. So first, I didn't have to take my asthma medication because I figured out how to breathe. Then I got off of dairy, and all of a sudden I didn't have to carry around a tissue box. I still got sinus infections, but my yeast infections almost went away. Right? I used to be terribly constipated as a child, terrible memories of like crying on the toilet, right? So anyway, so I figure out the breathing part. Then I go into, okay, let me take the dairy out. Then it was, let me try being vegan. But then I was uneducated at that point as to how to properly be a vegan and, you know, proper nutrients. So I was like what I call like a bread vegan, right? I ate tons of of bread. I didn't have any cheese or eggs or anything like that, but I was eating, you know, vegan pizzas and vegan mac and cheese, you know what I mean? And and now, you know, I'm getting allergies again, and I'm like, oh, it's getting worse. And then on top of that, as I'm getting older, I'm drinking, right? I'm, you know, wanting to be a famous dancer. And, you know, so you work in a restaurant business and you're working, you know, crazy hours and drinking at night. And that led me, you know, I really got heavy into partying. And it was really on a night when I experienced something truly terrible and had to make a choice of life or death, that in that moment I decided I have to make some changes. And that was when really things began to shift for me. And at that point, I started getting into things like the Celestine prophecy. I started reading about breatharianism. I started diving into like really off the cuff, strange nutrition books. I adopted a cat who was raw, you know, and I started reading about raw food for animals. And I was like, oh, how interesting. And then one day, and I think I mentioned this on our last live, I was at Barnes and Noble. I used to like to go there on my break, and I discovered this book with 3 naked guys in a tree. And I was like, what is this? And I open it up and I'm reading it, and I shut the book. And that night I became a raw vegan overnight. And then my life completely transformed. And less than 6 months later, I was down in Pennsylvania working for the only gourmet raw food meal service. So we had 300 stores across the tri-state area. And I was working directly with the owner as both, you know, his executive assistant and his sous chef. So I was getting all of these inspirations on how to create these amazing, delicious foods. And he turned me on to my first superfood smoothie with cacao and maca and like green powders.
Wow.
And I thought he put something in it. I got so like my whole body became activated and I felt high, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, what'd you put in here? And he told me. I was like, that's it. He's like, that's it. And I was like, and I couldn't believe what it did for me. And honestly, when I think about how I was eating gluten and drinking and suffering in my later years with depression and anxiety, right? Getting completely off of that and remineralizing my body with these superfoods, these micronutrient dense meals, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden I had no depression. All of a sudden, every ailment I had ever experienced as a child was completely gone. And when I say all of a sudden, I don't mean overnight. I mean about a year of being 100% raw. I remember I went to my gynecologist. He goes, what are you doing? He's like, it's like amazing down there. And I was like, I'm a raw vegan. And he was like, I don't know what that means, but keep doing it. You know?
Wow.
And that began the journey. And then, of course, when I realized what maca and cacao could do, you know, cacao being, I mean, I think it's so properly named food of the gods, you know, and that 300 compound chemicals that support the function of the body, that it quite literally releases anandamide, which is our bliss chemical. And you put maca into that, which is this incredible adaptogenic food that helps to balance our hormonal system and you know, act like a thyroid. You put those two together. And I mean, I remember at one point when I after I'd spent time in this whole raw food world, and I actually was part of the movement in Whole Foods in bringing all of the raw food, David Wolf lines, E3 Live, all this stuff. I was part of bringing awareness to Whole Foods that these companies existed. And I remember the construction guys would come in, I need to get off of coffee, I'm dying, what should I do? And I'd put them on maca. And they'd walk in, oh my God, Gabrielle, thank you so much, you know?
So go back to that book you mentioned with the
Yeah.
naked guys. So I have it, and it's probably behind me somewhere on the bookshelf, you know, signed. It's out of print, but do you recall the name of the book?
I do. Nature's First Law, The Raw Food Diet. Yeah, by David Wolf, and then Ardini is the last, Stephen Ardini, I think it was.
Yep.
And then I can't remember the other
one.
guy's name.
Yeah. And every chapter ended with a sentence.
Cooked food is poison.
Yes. So that was a bit extreme, obviously. But I think it hit home with me when I read it. I had already gone to, actually I'm wearing it right now.
Oh,
This is back from
oh my God, back in the day.
This was a retreat I went to with David Wolf and Gabriel Cousins. There was 13 of us that stayed overnight. It was a weekend retreat, and about 26 people all together in this little space. And I'm Alan Pratt's space. And it was just awesome. That's why I bought the shirt, and that's why I bought the book. So I'd been tuned in to David for a little bit, but when I read that book, it made sense. And I was already doing the raw vegan thing at the time, but it kind of cemented it in my mind, and it gave me a little bit more ammunition to help explain it to others, because I was in the same world you were probably into as far as who you're hanging around with, friends and family. And I lacked the ammo, and that book gave me the instruction and the blueprint on why this was the way for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. And I actually still recommend it sometimes.
Yeah. Stick on that point for a minute, and mentors and other people or other books or movies or things like that that help continue you on that path.
So I got into Arnold Ehret.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And David actually ended up becoming his assistant a few months later. I mean, it was just not even barely a year that I was in the raw food scene that I had met David Wolf, and I was like, this is it. I want to be in the center of it all. And I ended up becoming his assistant, moving, packing, selling all my stuff, keeping only what could fit in my car, and going to California and being his assistant, and really being immersed in a world, in what I like to call and refer to as the old school apprenticeships. You can't get that kind of information anymore, where you're one-on-one driving with someone for hours and getting downloads about experiences and health. And it was just amazing. And being able to spend time with, David's work in that book, I really feel, and to this day, David is a very good friend of mine at this point. But I'm so grateful I came across his work, because it was through that avenue that I then ended up meeting Gabriel Cousins, right? And getting to study with him for a little bit. Then I met Dr. David Jubb, and I got to study with him for a little bit, right? And that gave me this incredible, well-rounded, very exciting experience that was a physical experience versus something I just read in a book, right? And then from there, I traveled out again back to California. I was always back and forth between New York and California, and I started studying with Dr. Jerry Allen Johnson, who's a master in Chinese medicine. And so I did my first year in medical Qigong, and then just went back to more of a holistic approach to, that was amazing. But at the time, I actually owned my chocolate business.
Yeah,
right? It all comes full circle.
What was the name of that?
The one chocolate bar, one life, one love, one chocolate. And, that recipe came to me in a dream, and I made the first version of it with my boyfriend at the time, who was a raw foodist, who I met at Nature's First Law in our kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was amazing. And that, then that, just to go back to my love of chocolate and why. So as I became a chocolate manufacturer and working with raw, unadulterated, unprocessed cacao, and being a chocolatier, chocolate is like a wine. It's very complex, and you have to treat it a very particular way. And if you don't, your chocolate ends up like a pile of fudge. And you can't pour it in the molds, it's sticking, all kinds of crazy stuff. And so my
tried being vegan, but then I was uneducated.
Sorry.
That's okay. My chocolate bar ended up being in over 200 stores across the nation, Whole Foods. We were about to break into Canada, and that's when I got pregnant. But through this process of making chocolate by hand as the manufacturer, because I did everything in small batches, because I really wanted to keep to the integrity of the power of this food, that really ultimately, I think, is what solidified or crystallized the love affair I have with cacao, because I feel that it taught me secrets about alchemy.
Yeah.
So
let's bring that alchemy and that kind of Chinese traditional training into the word elixir, and how you or what was your first kind of delve into elixirs? What was your first experience? And talk about that a little bit.
So my first experience with elixirs was actually, I would chef David's retreats out in Eden, Arizona. And so I would have to make these huge vats of tea, but we wanted it to be fun, right? So we would have these incredible herbs of tea brewing, and then we would add, maybe we'd make a milk thistle, right? We'd blend those seeds and make a milk, and then we'd add, some of the tea with the burdock and yellow dock, right? And then we would add some cacao to that and some cinnamon, and then we were like, oh, what other flavors can we get in there, and that was really the beginning of exploring elixirs. And that over time became then, as I got to know how different herbs work, Ayurvedic, Chinese medicine, things like that, I started to put all of that together. And so now I have recipes that are specific to men and women, hormone balance, energy, mental focus, things like that, because it really is, again, an alchemy, right? You're creating a specific formula, but in these epic, delicious creations. My hormone balance elixir has been known, obviously I can't claim anything, but it has been known to help women who have horrible cycles actually be able to have manageable cycles and enjoy, right, being on their cycle, because now they're feeding their body. So magnesium, as you know, Glenn, but for our listeners, magnesium is the number one mineral or vitamin for our heart, but it's also what women lose a lot of during their cycle. And so to have something like cacao completely helps our body. Then you add maca and you add ashwagandha and other things to that concoction, and all of a sudden your entire, sexual hormonal system is being held and supported. And it tastes divine.
Yeah. And talk about somebody who may kind of listen to this and run to the store and maybe try to not buy the best ever ingredients. You got to go with the raw cacao powder. You got to go with the good maca. You got to find these ingredients, and they've got to still have vibration.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because like anything, cacao actually is, as complex as it is a food, it's a complex industry. And cacao is hybridized. You have terrible, if it's not a high quality, high vibrational cacao, you have beans being peed on by dogs and chickens while they're trying to lay in the sun and dry. These are unhealthy ways to go about getting your cacao. You want to really be specific and focused on having organic cacao. And my favorite is the Ariba Nacional, or the Criollo bean, because it's one of the, I believe, only heirloom lines left. Everything else has been hybridized to a degree. And it's also so rich in flavor. And raw, obviously, then we have everything intact, right? All of the essential chemical compounds that actually support the function of the body are now able to be assimilated in the body. We're able to receive that medicine. You know, I have favorite brands. Terrasol, I think, is great. Their nibs and their paste are really wonderful. Having said that, their powder isn't Criollo, while their nibs and paste are. I'm not sure why. They must be sourcing it from another place. So I get my cacao powder from Sacred Chocolate, because they make it, you know, Sacred Chocolate is David's company, but it's also a boutique manufacturer. So they're very small. They're all about integrity. Their prices are a little higher, but that's because it's a super tiny team making everything from scratch. So your powder is legit beans or nibs being ground in a grinder till it turns to powder. Done. So it's you know, kind of wet and sticky and delicious. And you're going to even get the benefit from the bean in the powder.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, you obviously work with your clients eventually after cleansing and getting them eating a better, cleaner diet. Elixirs definitely come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already talked about kind of what the possibilities behind your elixir recipes are. You know, talk about how that kind of came to you, all that, I guess, research or learning, or was it a lot of just drinking it and feeling the vibration?
It was a combination. It was, I am someone who really believes in experiencing. I like to consider myself a science experiment, right? I like to take the information I've been given, the education I've had, and I like to apply it to myself. And from there, I'm going to take note of what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what symptoms did I have, what detox reactions did I have, what positive reactions did my body go through. And so I took that, and I took what tasted good. And I'm really someone who believes in the magic of play in the kitchen. As you know, I've chefed multiple healing retreats, and I used to own a raw food catering company, and I used to cater for Cosm every New Year's Eve party. You know, so I have this flair for creating interesting concoctions. I think it goes back to that alchemy piece, you know, and my company is called The Alchemy of Self. I really believe in the magic of that. And so it was a combination of sort of taking what I know works in my body, what I think tastes good, and sharing that. And then also, in my experience with clients, recording that information, right? What works for men? What works for women? What did men experience when they had this? What did women experience when they had this? Right? And so now I have really crystallized a few recipes that I know do specific things.
And people can get to those on your website, or buy like an ebook, or is there an available?
I have a little mini tutorial. Yeah, it's called the Elixir tutorial, I believe. And it's on my website, and it's super inexpensive, and it's 3 hours of tutorials. There's a shopping list and recipes you can download. And the shopping list is hyperlinked, so you know exactly what to look for. And I'm not affiliated with any of them. I'm just sharing these companies because I use them myself and I value their integrity. But yeah, it's a great little tutorial to kind of get you off and running and figure out how to play with all of these herbs and cacao.
So,
oh shoot, hold on, someone's knocking at my door.
oh my God. Okay, you take that. So we got some people on Facebook, which is pretty cool. So if you guys have any questions, I think there's a way that you can ask them, but I haven't seen any questions pop up yet. But if you do, go ahead and ask away. I have one eye kind of checking that out a little bit, and I can throw those questions at Gabby. But Gabby, so right now I wanted to stay on this elixir topic for a little bit, and just break it down a little bit. You mentioned making like an herbal tea, so that can be a base for an elixir. But can people use nut milk? Can they use oat milk? Are there different kind of ways things to use as a base for elixirs?
Yeah, great question.
And then just talk about hot and cold and how much that matters.
Totally. And that's a great question. So The base of an elixir can be any kind of tea. I really recommend, first of all, I'm a believer in, eat what you love. If you don't like rose tea, don't drink rose tea. Pick another tea that you love. If you love chamomile tea, use chamomile tea as a base, right? Then you can add in the other herbs, and now you're getting benefits of this herbal tea, as well as adding the benefits of the herbs and the cacao. So cacao is a driver, right? So cacao is going to take all of that medicine, its own, plus those that it's surrounding, and it's going to drive it deeper into your system. And that's another favorite quality of mine of cacao, is that it really takes the information that it's with and it takes it deeper into you. So using, you could use any kind of tea. You could use a chaga tea, right? You can use just warm water and add some coconut milk to it, or use a nut milk and add, some of the herbs and the cacao. Now, the only thing is with the cacao paste is that because it's a paste, you need something a little bit warm to help it melt. So I always add a little bit of warm water. And then in the summer, what I do is I put a little bit of warm water. That way the cacao paste starts to melt. I add all of my other ingredients. Then I top it off with regular water or whatever tea I have. And then I throw ice cubes in. And so in the summer, I have a frothy, right? Like a Frappuccino style drink. I see you smiling over there. I can't see.
Yeah. Somebody just asked a question, and they asked if they can have a cup of tea. So funny stuff online. So talk about your elixir day. Do you try to grab one or create one or make one every day, a couple a week? And talk about your children and maybe just the age of them and how they've adapted to elixirs and maybe different tasting stuff. Because I know kids come to the cafe all the time. Their parents will get this magic mushroom. All right, so in the magic mushroom, there's chaga powder, there's reishi powder, there's mesquite, there's coconut oil, almond milk, hot water, and cacao.
Yeah.
So we blend that up. We usually get it hot, and everybody loves that. And every once in a while, I'll see a kid give it a try, and they're not always like, they look at it and they think, oh, this is warm hot cocoa, but it's got a little bit of a different flavor to it. So your kids, do they love this kind of lifestyle and this way of drinking and eating?
They do, but here's the thing. I started them young. Like, I have pictures of my kids as teeny tiny, like 2.5-year-olds sipping little teacups filled with raw chocolate drinks in them, and I secretly was putting herbs, nothing major, like a little reishi or a little chaga that I knew would support their immune system, right? And so what I do for children now is I actually make them taste like hot cocoa, but still add the herbs. And it's really about ratio. And you do have to, I think, for children who aren't used to, whether they're young or in their teens or 20s, if they're used to eating a sugary or drinking a sugary drink, you have to use something like maple syrup. You can't use stevia or xylitol or something like that, because that is a very distinct flavor if you're not used to it. So for kids and young teens and young adults that really want to get into it, adding something like maple syrup and heavier on the cacao powder with a little bit of the herbs, now they're getting the medicine, but it tastes good. Tastes like actual cocoa.
Yeah. Well, let's get into a little bit of the present times. We're doing this conversation in late June of 2020. So there's something going on out there. And obviously not only at this time, but at any time, but for some people more now than ever, just immunity. So how are we, or how are you and the boys and your clients, how are you amping up the immunity protection? Do you have any kind of secrets or general stuff you can share?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And just to backtrack for a second, I do have an elixir almost every day. And I always put maca in it. Maca and cacao are like my favorite couple, And then I choose the herbs based on what I want to cultivate. Do I need some energy? Do I need, am I on my cycle? Do I need some hormone balance? Things like that, right? So that's kind of how I pick and choose my herbs. Or do I need an immunity boost? And so then I'll go for things like more of the medicinal mushroom avenue, right? So if you're looking to boost immunity, it's definitely within herbs that I take. So I would get that through an elixir or a smoothie, but typically through an elixir, because you can put, I'll put, like I said, reishi, chaga, turkey tail, things like that in the elixir. However, though, I also use Symbiotica vitamin C, which is a live food source vitamin C. That's 1,000 milligrams per teaspoon. So the kids and I take that, and it's delicious. It's real food. There's zero, synthetics or anything like that. And then I've really used coated silver. That's the other piece that I've used. And I just do 1 drop of that in 8 ounces of water. My kids take it, I take it. So between supplementing we supplement our lifestyle with powerful supplements that are food-based, that are what I consider to be very powerful, nutrient-dense supplements. It's not what we think of as a supplement when we go to the store, where we're getting some lab-created pill that's a bunch of isolates smushed together with some, toxic coating. I'm talking about like truly live foods that are brought together in a completely bioavailable way that is easy for our body to assimilate and tastes amazing. It's like food, powerful food in a teaspoon. So our lifestyle is very rich in herbs and superfoods and elixirs and fresh veggies and fresh fruits, right? And then to compound that, we're adding powerful supplements.
So yeah, let's give David Wolf and his cousin, I believe, there a little shout out.
Yeah.
I haven't yet had any of the coated silver, and I've been listening to a ton of David Wolf's Immunity Summit, so I've been hearing about it and learning about it. And then also his cousin there is a pretty powerful
speaker
and presenter, and that Symbiotica company has really got my interest up, and I've been looking into it. But delve into that a little bit more, because that's what it sounds like you're talking about, like really super vibrational stuff, not going down to the drugstore and picking up, the first bottle that's on sale.
Exactly. And honestly, what is, why I've continued to follow David and as yes, he's a very good friend of mine, but why I continue to retain respect is because he is quite literally on the cutting edge. His ability to discover the new, right, is at a rate that I just haven't seen anywhere else. And same with Shervin. His company, Symbiotica, it's the only one around. I mean, they're doing groundbreaking work by bringing foods, powerful foods, together in a way that you're actually imbibing a live food supplement that's profoundly effective in its ability to be assimilated and deliver a ton of nutrients in one little dose. I mean, it's unreal. It's unreal. And I, for one, have almost transitioned all of my supplementation to Symbiotica, because once you start taking supplements of that quality, that are that potent, right, and that are alive, and you see how your body reacts, you don't need anything else.
Right. That's kind of like when you go healthy and you feel good and you have all that energy, going back to having pizza and soda and all that stuff, just it becomes a non-option.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And honestly, it's in stages. Like if you're having a GNC vitamin, your first step is to go to Whole Foods or your local health food store and get, a great company like Gaia Herbs or Garden of Life. Get just an organic whole food supplement. Start there. If Symbiotica feels too out of reach, or you can't quite comprehend, spending the money on something like that, then start where you are. And I'm a big believer in bridges. right? We can't get all the way to Z with one big leap. We have to really take steps, and everybody's on their own journey. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's body is going to respond differently, and that's okay. It's okay. There's not, like, you can't do it wrong, right? It's like, choose organic foods that are whole foods. I was just having this conversation. I have a group that I coach every week, and the call today was, if there was only 5 things you ever did, it was eat organic, biodynamic, whole, fresh food. 4 things, right? And I think we've gotten so far away from that. Now, when you want to get into, okay, I want to, I have these specific health issues, that's when you get into the nuances. That's when you get into the fine tuning, and that's where I come in. But you have to start from the basic concept first.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking this question is I just saw Matt Monarch recently popped on and was listening to a little bit about what we're saying here. And I did an interview with him not too long ago, but when did raw vegan kind of run its course for you, or did it? I know it kind of did for me, and I brought in some cooked foods, staying predominantly vegan, but a little bit of eggs and some fun powders via Daniel Vitalis and things like that. But when did the cooked food kind of make its way back in? And maybe just explain the difference between cooked and raw, because one of my high school buddies on Facebook is asking that question. That to me and you is different, but for some people they need to know, when does raw not become raw anymore?
Great question. I'm actually really glad you asked this, because I think raw food is essential for longevity and health, and for actual, like, incredibly powerful cleansing of the body. So how I view raw food is it's truly unprocessed. You're not roasting, you're not steaming, you're not sauteing. You're really not cooking it to any degree. Maybe you're fermenting it a little bit. It's still live food, right? So I don't know. That seems pretty simple to me. Raw food is, and then when you eat like gourmet raw food, you can use what's called a dehydrator, which I used to love to make these pizza crusts or these crackers or wraps, where I would basically sprout flax seeds and God knows what else. Plantain and flax and everything. And I'd spread it out on the dehydrator sheets, and I'd stick it in the dehydrator, and it basically blows warm air at such a low temperature. It takes like 2 days to make these things.
Yeah.
But they're so good and they're worth it. And what happens when your body eats what's considered live food, we become what we consume, body, mind, spirit. Right? What are you consuming? Are you consuming chemical-laden dead food all the time? Well, how do you think your body and your mind is going to respond to that? If you're consuming live, organic food that's potent, that your body can actually assimilate the nutrients, that's going to affect your being. Right? Now you have to remind me where I was supposed to go with that, because I went on a tangent.
Just, I'm gonna get you back to where I want you to finish that. Okay. But I also just want to say, give Catch a Healthy Habit a plug, because we've been doing this now a little bit over 10 years. And yeah, so we make a spring roll. So the spring roll is basically coconut meat, coconut water, spinach, blend it, spread it out on that dehydrator tray like you were talking about, dehydrate it, and then you have wrappers. Then inside the wrappers, we're putting some either lettuce or spinach, some avocado, some kelp noodles.
Oh my God, I'm so hungry.
Kind of sauce out of like mangoes and soaking the kelp noodles in that. And, so you can create gourmet or close to gourmet food with the help of a dehydrator. Like our burger is a whole bunch of nuts, walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, and pecans, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and then a whole slew of veggies. And then that gets mixed up and dehydrated. And then we put that on onion bread, which was the recipe that I got from one lucky
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
That onion bread is so good.
It's so good. And literally it's I think it's only 4 ingredients. It's ground flaxseed, ground sunflower seed, pureed onion, and olive oil and salt. So we're going five ingredients and dehydrator, and it's amazing. And it's so funny when, you know, women, mostly women, it'll be Mother's Day, it'll be their birthday, and they'll convince their boyfriend or husband to bring them there, and they got to come along for the ride. And I don't eat this way. I'm like, come on, just have the burger, have the nori wrap, and then, let's talk. And every single one of them. Sometimes we've had some bigger guys walk out and maybe not be full, but nobody is complaining about the taste or the texture of, or how the food feels. So raw food it's just kind of amazing. There aren't the raw food restaurants anymore in New York City that really were there in the mid 2000s, that all of us hung out at
I know.
constantly.
I know. I miss them.
But we're a cafe and we're
But
doing.
thank God for Catch a Healthy Habit. My God.
And it's a great way. But I wanted to bring you back to, when did cooked food kind of make its way back into your world?
When I got pregnant.
Yeah.
Growing twins in my body. I needed warming, especially after studying Chinese medicine and understanding how the organs work. And I had been a raw vegan for almost 10 years at this point, and I was actually starting to feel undernourished. And I think it's because I was just in a cleansing space all the time, because it's just such cleaning. You're so clean.
Right.
And I needed to rebuild a bit. Not that I know many people who have successfully lived 100% raw vegan lifestyles. And I think that's amazing. But as I've mentioned many times, I also believe in bio-individuality and age and where are you in your life. And as a woman, who was growing twins, I ate tons of superfood smoothies, and tons of raw food, but I needed warmth. Right. So I ate also a ton of sauteed vegetables. My salads were like what you would make to feed 5 people. And I was eating that for myself, and it was a mix of raw vegetables and then cooked vegetables. And while I was pregnant, that's what I needed. And actually around 6 months pregnant, I had a craving for wild fish. I hadn't craved wild fish in ages. And psychologically, it was really actually hard for me to eat the wild salmon, and I ate a little bit of grass-fed beef because spiritually it isn't something I wanted to do, but I also believe in listening to my body, and I'm growing 2 humans, and it was more important to me to make sure that they were okay and to listen to the cravings of my body that I hadn't had in over a decade, right? So then I breastfed for almost 3 years, so I maintained some eggs, I maintained some wild fish. And then as they've gotten older, I really am, especially now, it's really hard for me. I believe in veganism from the standpoint of, I really don't want to eat animals. And having said that, when my mother's boyfriend hunts and he prays over a deer and we're at dinner together and he's had that, I do have some of that. And what I've come to in life is that there is a balance, and how I live mostly full time is high raw, meaning, so what high raw means is that I'm eating mostly live, raw, uncooked foods and superfoods. And then when it's cold, I add sauteed and steamed veggies to my life. And in weather like this, when it's 85 and 90 degrees, it's real. I want salads and smoothies.
Yeah. Well, how can people? I'm sure you touched a lot of people, and your message and your information and your just kind of love for these topics. How can people find you? Where can they find you? Follow you? Talk about that business end of it a little bit.
Thanks, Glenn. So my website is gabriellebrick.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm really more active on Instagram than I am on FB, although I have a great following on Facebook. And I'm both anywhere. It's like GabrielleBrick.com. I'm Gabrielle Brick on Instagram and Gabrielle Brick on Facebook. And I have 2 pages on Facebook. I have my personal or my business page. And my business page is really where I'll post mostly. And so that's how you can find me. And I offer consultations, so people can set up time to talk with me. And, you know, if you're experiencing chronic health issues, or you're looking to up-level your game, you know, a consultation is always free, because I really want to make sure I can help you and that we're a right fit before we engage in any kind of work together. And so I like to spend time really getting to know you and hearing what's happening for you. And then at that point, I can share information on how my program works, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks for some time. And you know, this was great. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody who is listening is going to take away some nuggets of wisdom. And then, of course, we'll have this up on Facebook, and then it's going to be a podcast. It'll be around for a long time. So we want to share.
Absolutely. I'll absolutely share. So please make sure you send me all the information, and then let me know as soon as we can do some inside dining.
Yes. Yeah, we got to have you.
We'll make the road trip. Yeah.
We got to have you and the boys up, and maybe Avocado, after all this time of not traveling, which he's not done for 26 some odd years, maybe he'll get out on the road again, and we can have a big
party.
Big party. And like we talked about, having an Elixir party.
Yes.
You got to do that.
Yes. Oh my God.
People high on reishi, chocolate, like you said, lion's mane. We'll hit up some vodka. We'll get some stuff. We'll have that coated silver. We'll just throw all the whistles and bells at people and get up, you know, and let people understand that drugs and alcohol aren't always the way to having a good time. I mean, I've had a lot of good times over the past 18 years that involved zero of that stuff.
Exactly. And just to touch on that quickly, you know, the whole alcohol and drugs thing, like, if we were to stop and think about the fact that our society celebrates actually the choice to hurt yourself, is something to question, right? Like, alcohol and drugs create sickness in the body and sickness in the mind. Listen, I know firsthand, right? So I'm coming from a place of having experienced that. And when I discovered that I can have more fun, honest fun, life transforming fun, and be sipping a cacao herb drink, I'm game.
Yeah. I mean, those chocolate parties David Wolf used to host in the city, and I'm sure you were.
I did. I hosted one of his birthday parties.
Oh my God, just outrageous. Yeah. Speaking of birthday parties, David and I have the same birthday on August.
Oh, you do?
On August 6th.
Oh my God.
Let's see where we are in mid-July and see if we need to plan anything.
Yes. And, you know, even if Avo isn't going to come travel, I think we should just have a party for you too.
And we can Zoom them in and we can have some fun.
Yes, totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Gabrielle, thanks for taking some time. This was awesome. And we will be in touch.
Thanks, Glenn. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
You're welcome.